at 16, I was like, something has to change. And so I left home at 16. And from 16 to 23, I consider my trauma, you can't read that, but it says dormant. So imagine somebody that has cancer and then it goes into remission. Well, when I was 16, I ran away from home and it was the best thing that I could have ever done. I really started forming healthy relationships, changed my whole life. Like I became a whole different person. The beliefs that I had because of the trauma went dormant. So I was just becoming who I really was, really confident in myself, loving myself, all that kind of things. At 23, for the first time in my adult life after 16, that says shame, something happened in my adult life that woke up my shame wound. See, I thought I was healed from my past trauma because it wasn't evident in my life. But once that shame wound opened up, I was now back in my coping skills that I had as a child. As a result, I wound up in a toxic relationship. It's 11 years ago that it ended. So these are the last 11 years, okay? But somewhere in that relationship, something really horrible happened. As you guys know, there's daily horrors with a narcissist, but this was something really so traumatic to my nervous system that it's like I was a different person from one day to the next. And what happens when this happened, this is where I'm going to make this a red mark right here. When this event happened, right, I was dealing with the toxic relationship and it was traumatic in my adult life. But when it opens up childhood trauma, your nervous system, it's almost like it bends space and time. So bear with me for a second. It's going to make sense. All these years I had grown, right? I was a different person. But when that trauma opened up, it's as if my nervous system went back to when I was an infant. The traumas, the first traumas that I faced in my life, my nervous system started handling everything in my life from the coping skills at this time. So just thinking about that for a second, does that make sense? Like when you think about the trauma in your adult life, do you feel like it somehow merged with childhood trauma and created this ball of trauma that like got all clustered together and stuck in the body? So I share that because at the time that this happened, I had no idea what was going on. All I knew was that something happened. I wasn't the same. And because I didn't understand it, it fed the belief there's something wrong with me. I'm the problem because I was so different. So I share that. So if anyone's facing that, so that you can understand that that's something that happens with our nervous system. So when I started to heal, I started my YouTube channel for anyone that's aware of, I guess it was 2016 when I started that, the end of 2016. And that year, I wrote a PDF called I Miss Me and I Want Me Back. And I still didn't understand exactly what I was talking about. But again, I just want to show you what happened with my nervous system. So for example, if you've heard of the window of tolerance, right? That's where we're ourselves without getting flung into anxiety and without getting flung into dissociation. We're doing things, we're living life, and it's comfortable, right? So this was my window of tolerance before my childhood trauma got woken up. Spirituality was important to me, connection, friendships. The emotions I was in were passion, joy. I was confident, I liked myself. I loved to do things, to learn, on and on. That was my window of tolerance. When I was doing these things, I was happy. I was thriving. But as you know, because I was in a relationship with a narcissist, when you're being you, was my window of tolerance. Something so stressful happens that it flung me out of my window of tolerance. Then I started to come down, but before I could ever get back in, something else happens. Coming down, something else happens. Something else happens. Before you know it, basically, this was my new window of tolerance. Being in emotions like anxiety, fear, disconnect, shame became more familiar than the things that were once me. And so I didn't understand this fully when I wrote the PDF, I Miss Me and I Want Me Back. But basically, I realized I was different and I was different. I was living life with a completely different nervous system. Now, for some, I put this here. Let me see. You can get flung down into hypoarousal of dissociation and shutdown. So it's either or. Right? So for some people, you might identify, well, maybe I didn't go into anxiety. I just shut down. And then there's some where you might feel flung in between both. But the point is that your old window of tolerance, we're not in anymore. And the reason I share this is because when I left that relationship, I expected the things that made up me when I was in my window of tolerance from prior. I thought I'd spring back, and I'm waiting, and it didn't happen. And that's when I started realizing that it's not enough to leave toxic relationships. You can leave all toxic relationships and still feel like you're suffering if your nervous system is still staying in what it became because of the trauma, or if the beliefs that were created from the trauma are still there. So for example, I learned that trauma isn't necessarily or mainly what happened to you as much as what's still stuck in the body. So hearing that, when I first heard that, I was like, what do you mean? No, it's because of that happened to me. And that's why I'm like this. Well, yes, that created the traumatic event, but the trauma is what's still there even when the person is gone. Yes or no, if that makes sense, guys? Because if it doesn't, I'll clarify. Awesome. When I first heard that, I was like, no, it's like because of that relationship, and I was really focused on that. As a result of what I just shared with you with my timeline and with what happened with my nervous system, I always feel like a picture says 1,000 words. I felt erased. I looked at this picture, and it's funny because the person that was I was in the toxic relationship with at this time was taking this picture, and he was like, I remember this like it was yesterday. He's like, look happy. And I thought I looked happy. And then I look at this picture, I'm like, poor thing. I see just somebody that's hollow, that's like scared to even show emotion. So if you can relate to that, you're not alone. And so once I realized that the trauma wasn't just what happened to me, that's when I started doing a lot of work to help myself and now help others as well. So let's talk about why we stay stuck, right? Even if we leave all relationships. And I like to talk about this because I know there are a lot of channels that say, leave. And whether you leave or not, so I don't think that it's my place to tell somebody to leave or to not leave. So my focus is always on, no matter where you are, do the work to get yourself to heal your nervous system, because when you're in that place, you make the best decisions out there. So let's talk about why we stay stuck. I mentioned that trauma is the painful beliefs that are created as a result of an event. So for example, let's say two people get into a car accident, same circumstances. Somebody runs a red light. They suffer the same injuries, the same healing recuperation time. Person A is like, oh, that was horrible. That was intense. They take their time to heal. They get back behind the wheel. They're like, you know what? I know I'm a good driver. I know I'm safe. I know I can do this. And they continue as if nothing happened after they heal. And then there's a person that's like, I'm not safe. I can't. They go to just be near a car and their whole body starts activating. One person, same circumstances. This is why trauma is not the event. One person's nervous system, for whatever reason, didn't get dented. The belief system didn't change. The other person, their belief system changed. It went from I am safe to I'm not safe. And the body is stuck there. Doesn't mean one person is better than the other. Sometimes it's our life circumstances in the past that can make us susceptible. Like in my case, because I had past trauma, when I was an adult, it was easier for my body to get stuck because it had a lot in the past that I hadn't healed. So it's the belief system that can keep us stuck. So if you had good enough parenting, right, you get the beliefs, I'm lovable, I'm worthy, I'm safe, I matter, I'm allowed. And that can often reflect in your relationships, whether they're romantic or friendships. If you had beliefs, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, I'm not safe, I don't matter, that can also oftentimes make us susceptible to people that use your wounds against you, right? That makes us susceptible to narcissistic relationships. But I do want to say that sometimes people with great childhoods can also get sucked into a relationship with a narcissist, just to throw that out there. And then if that happens, if in their adult life, those beliefs are created, then there's the trauma. It's those negative beliefs that are formed. And then we have to do the work to heal them. Just like if someone plants malware in a computer, it's a software that's designed to cause harm to a computer or its user. You can turn off the computer and put it aside for 10 years. The second you turn on that computer, it still has the malware. Well, our subconscious functions like a computer. So if our subconscious developed beliefs because of the trauma, the traumatic events, the negative beliefs, no amount of time changes that. Our conscious mind changes by learning, but our subconscious doesn't. So while just like a person with a faulty malware in their computer can spend time learning who did it and how they did it, and that's important, right? So it doesn't happen again. Eventually, they have to shift into removing it. And so that's kind of what happens with us. Those programs are there and we have to do the work. I tried to let time heals all wounds. I'd like to rephrase it to time heals many wounds, but trauma wounds, it doesn't. And it makes sense. Like, think about my body. Like, if I get a cut, my body's going to heal that. Time is going to heal that wound. I break a bone? No, I need to get help. More is needed than time. And that's what happens with our nervous system. So I want to just talk about, the time here. I want to talk about why it's hard, because I don't know about you guys, but I always say, like, I felt like it was trying to find the Holy Grail. Like, how many of you felt like, okay, how am I going to heal? And you're trying and you're starting over and you're hitting a wall and you're starting over. Anyone else experience that? Because that's how I felt for a long time. Yes or no in the chat box? Yeah. Okay. Not alone. Thank you. So I want to talk about 3 things that I learned on my own recovery that helped me to understand why it was so challenging, just so that we can normalize. Because I also think that we can be too hard on ourselves. We push ourselves. We should be over this. We should be, or other people make us feel that way. And it's very disheartening. So I want to talk about why it can be so challenging. So the first reason is that in order to heal, as much as, like, let's say this is my trauma, every trauma belief with every life circumstance that reinforced it, with the emotions and the people, and I have this knot right inside of me. Here's my trauma. We all want to be like, okay, tell me what to do so I can reach in and throw it out of me, right? I mean, that's what I wanted to do. I was like, how do I get rid of this? It doesn't work that way. We have to, a lot of this, or most of this, is in our subconscious. And in order to change it, we have to bring it into our conscious awareness. And that's uncomfortable. I can't tell you how many times I've had somebody say to me, a client say, I don't want to do this because then I have to feel it. And in part, we do have to feel it to heal it. There's a way to do it without being re-traumatized. We're talking about this recently in the School of Transformation. But we do have to bring it into our conscious awareness to work with it, which means we have to notice that discomfort. So that's one thing that makes it challenging. We live in a world, I think, where we want things fast and easy. And this is trauma. This is altered our brain and our nervous system, and there is no quick, easy approach. The other thing that I think is challenging is that who we are today, like, there are times I've heard people say, but I'm fine. I don't want to go there. Why do I have to? Like, can't I just start healing from here forward? If that's in my subconscious, I'm going to leave it there. Why do I have to open the door to that? So the reason is because even if the things are outside of our conscious awareness, even if we don't remember what happened, the body does. And then what happens is that anything that happens in our current circumstances that reminds our nervous system of what happened in the past, our nervous system bends time and space, and we have what's known as an emotional flashback. Our nervous system starts dealing with what's happening in the present and everything that happened in the past related to it, otherwise known as an emotional flashback. Anyone experience that? Or like things are happening in the present, and like mentally you're like, this shouldn't affect me like this, but the body's just like ready. So the reason is because even if trauma is outside of our conscious awareness, it's right there. Our nervous system is always evaluating for anything that's similar to what happened. All right. So if we left it in the past, we would suffer with emotional flashbacks for the rest of our life. So we have to be with it. We have to go there. And then the last thing that makes it challenging is, I know with myself, especially with a lot of trauma, the body doesn't feel safe. And so we vacate our body, we live from the neck up, right? We're not feeling we're intellectualizing everything. It's more safe to be in our mind than in our body. And so we might address the recovery like that, like, okay, I'm going to learn my way through it. But that also doesn't work. We have to start learning how to be with the body. So those are 3 reasons why it's challenging. I just want to throw it out there because I'm not a believer in saying, oh, this is easy. This is easy. It's not. It's worth it. It's worth the effort. But we do have to go through those discomforts. And I think that sometimes we just want to learn to do something different and then everything else falls into place. Does that resonate? Like, just tell me what to do different. I'm going to do that. And then I don't have to deal with all of this. Yes. Okay. But we have to invite the body. And I want to invite you if you want to. If you don't have to. There's always options. You can just watch. But just to notice why it's important that we invite the body. I want to invite you to just think about where you are on your recovery. Think about where you feel stuck, what's involved with shifting out of that. Like, what would that look like? Think about why you're stuck there. And as your mind is going to that place, what do you notice inside your body? Let me know in the chat box. My chest and throat get tight. I feel stuck with releasing some trauma, fun aspects. But what are you noticing in your body as you're thinking about the trauma? It would be incredible freedom. My entire chest opens up. I feel light as a feather. Chest tightness, a mix. Body is tense. People aren't reliable. So I would encourage you, like, how does your body respond to people aren't reliable? What does that feel like in your body? Hip and back pain, heat in front of face, tears, tightness in my back. Body feels tired. Checking out. Okay. First of all, thank you for doing that. I just want to let you guys know, do you see what's here? This is why we can't just, let's do something different. We have to learn to work with this. So I want to invite you, before we continue on anything, since that activation came up, I want to invite you to notice it and notice your surroundings. Like, notice that whatever is here is not happening now in your space. So really take a moment to, if there's a window, looking at nature, if you have a pet, looking at your pet, being in your senses. Like, notice that when that constriction or activation comes up, it's your body bracing for threat. So when you orient to your surroundings, you're helping your nervous system to see that it's not happening now.